1840, that's the number I want you to hold in your mind, not a range of years, not a vague era in the age of exploration, one single year. Because in that year, 3 separate expeditions, American, British, and French, each set sail toward the same frozen continent on Earth, Antarctica, independently, within months of one another. For years I accepted the standard explanation historians usually give. Parallel exploration, national ambition, the natural momentum of 19th century discovery. 3 countries racing toward the last unmapped region of the planet, driven by curiosity, prestige, and the relentless spirit of discovery that defined an age. On the surface, that explanation works, even seems reasonable. But the deeper you dive into the historical record, the harder it becomes to ignore the strange details, the small inconsistencies, the notes that never made it into official reports. It began with a single line, almost hidden, buried in a footnote of a partially suppressed expedition log, a line that was quietly removed before the official report was published. 7 words. Formations inconsistent with any natural process known. 7 words written by someone who had seen something that challenged conventional understanding, and later removed by someone who decided the public should not know. And once you notice that detail, the rest of the story begins to look very different, like the edges of a picture that suddenly come into focus. 50 years later, a survivor from the first expedition to deliberately spend the winter on Antarctica gave a single interview describing something even stranger. He said members of his crew believed they had seen cities beneath the ice, structures unlike anything they had ever known. That interview remained buried for decades in a Norwegian newspaper archive, and the relevant passage wasn't translated into English for nearly 60 years. That was the moment I realized something crucial about this story. The deeper you go, the harder it becomes to stop looking, the more you realize there are layers to history that have been carefully hidden or forgotten. The American expedition was led by naval officer Charles Wilkes, a man determined to chart the unknown and bring the secrets of the far south to light. He departed in August 1838, commanding a squadron of 6 vessels, one of the most ambitious scientific endeavors the United States had ever undertaken. Over the next 4 years, Wilkes and his crew charted more than 1,500 miles of Antarctic coastline, confirming that Antarctica was not a scattering of islands, but a vast continental landmass, solid and real. Yet almost immediately, problems began to emerge in the official narrative. Members of Wilkes' own expedition quietly challenged parts of the report, not because they thought the discoveries exaggerated, but because they believed the record was incomplete, lacking critical observations that could not easily be explained. Private letters written by crew members described angular rock faces, repeated geometric structures, stone formations that seemed deliberately arranged rather than randomly eroded. None of these details appeared in the published expedition report. Wilkes himself would later face court-martial proceedings during his naval career, accused of misconduct and harsh treatment of crew members. He was acquitted on most charges, but the controversies permanently damaged his reputation. The man who had commanded America's largest Antarctic expedition spent the rest of his life in relative bureaucratic obscurity, and when his personal journals were finally published, large sections had been heavily edited or removed entirely. At almost the same time, another expedition was traveling south under the command of French explorer Jules Dumont d'Urville. He departed from Toulon in 1837, aiming officially to push further into Antarctic waters than any previous French voyage. He succeeded. He discovered a section of coastline he named Adélie Land, after his wife, and returned to France celebrated, his discoveries published and his reputation secure. Yet 2 years after returning, a tragic accident struck. In May 1842, Dumont d'Urville boarded a train near Versailles with his wife and young son. The train derailed, crashed violently, and caught fire. Dozens of passengers perished, including Dumont d'Urville, his wife, and child. Much of the luggage was destroyed, including documents from the Antarctic expedition that might have contained unpublished observations. The third expedition was led by Sir James Clark Ross, one of the most respected naval explorers of his era. During his voyage, he discovered what is now known as the Ross Ice Shelf, a vast frozen wall stretching hundreds of miles. Ross described the barrier as impenetrable, and his official accounts were precise, restrained, and highly scientific, considered exemplary of Victorian exploration writing. Yet decades later, historians examining original crew journals noticed descriptions missing from the official reports: exposed rock formations where the wind had stripped away sections of ice, geometric anomalies, structured stone formations, evidence of unusual patterns in the rock itself. Nearly 60 years later, in 1898, Norwegian explorer Karsten Borchgrevink led the Southern Cross expedition, the first to deliberately spend the winter on the Antarctic continent. Official records focused on expected subjects: extreme cold, isolation, wildlife, and meteorological measurements. But certain observations received minimal attention. One crew member, zoologist Nikolai Hansen, died at 29, briefly mentioned in historical summaries. Another crew member spent life refusing to speak about what he had seen, except once in 1903, describing episodes where the expedition's members believed they could see organized structures beneath the ice, patterns that resembled grids, large stone formations, almost like parts of a buried city. Antarctica is not entirely covered in ice. Exposed rock regions known as nunataks reveal underlying geology. Early explorers described unusual formations in these areas: right-angle rock faces, repeated geometric intervals, stone that fractured in strangely regular patterns. Geologists today cite columnar basalt, frost wedging, and differential erosion as explanations for some geometric formations. Yet the distribution is striking. Explorers from different expeditions noted similar formations separated by hundreds of miles, locations not identical, yet sharing characteristics. When researchers mapped these sites, the pattern appeared organized, almost deliberate, as if part of a larger plan. Ancient maps like the Piri Reis map, 1513, and the Orontius Phineas map, 16th century, show Antarctic coastlines without ice, suggesting pre-existing knowledge unknown to modern explorers. Who created those sources and how did they know? Individually, these details may seem unprovable. Explorers misinterpret geology, extreme conditions create hallucinations, old maps may be misread. Yet, taken together, the pattern is striking. 3 expeditions, 3 nations, repeated suppression of geological observations, missing descriptions, unfinished journals, references to formations never officially reported. It is always the rocks, the formations, the same silence repeated across decades. Why would multiple nations independently suppress geological features unless they suggested something extraordinary, unexpected, or threatening to conventional understanding? Maybe explorers misinterpreted unusual formations. Maybe optical illusions created the appearance of distant structures. Maybe isolation and psychological stress shaped perception. All plausible. Yet the record shows repeated silence, missing details, unfinished descriptions. 3 expeditions, 1 silence. What exactly did these explorers see along the Antarctic coastline that never made it into official reports? What did the exposed rock formations truly look like? And why do so many early accounts stop just short of describing them? Beneath miles of Antarctic ice, the answer may still exist, waiting for someone willing to ask the question again, daring to explore beyond the records, to imagine what lies hidden beneath the frozen surface, unseen by modern eyes, preserved in silence, waiting.